This is a cool bridge in Lagos. It's one of 3 bridges in the city of Lagos that connects Lagos Island to Lagos mainland. This is said to be the shortest of them, by the way, and especially now that all traffic is diverted away from the 3rd mainland bridge. This is one of those bridges that's getting the job done, built in 1975, and the whole idea of it, started as far back as 1963. Again, I say this is Lagos. The temperature at this time is about 27%, beg your pardon, and the humidity is still looking somewhere in the 90s, 92 degrees at this particular time. Once again, welcome. This is Lagos. I'm Ayo Makinde. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. What's happening today, guys?
Well, quite a lot of things are going to be happening today, but Ayo, I thought we'll look at the business side of things, that the MPC expectations from the MPC Monetary Policy Committee meeting today. That's what we're looking at on business.
Well, most certainly something to look at today. Expectation from the MPC meeting. How is that going to go at the end of the day? I guess we'll find out in the course of time. That will happen on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily at 10 o'clock, the hour, the top of the next hour. In the meantime, let's go look at what the papers are saying.
And we're looking at what the papers are saying, some of the daily, starting out with the Guardian newspaper, and they lead with that story around inflation and rising construction costs. This is how they captioned it: low middle class defer home ownership plans for food. When it gets to that point where you have to think about, which would I have first? Can I have food or do I need a roof over my head? Let's go for the food, because you need to be alive to have a roof over your head. That's what the Guardian's leading with.
Yeah, that's also because, a large portion of what it is that should go into savings for such long-term projects are now going to immediate needs such as food. A really, really disturbing situation. But take a look at Daily Trust, and they have this for you. Barely how many days after we had the abductions in Kuriga, this is what we're seeing on the front page of Daily Trust. 86 abducted in fresh Kaduna attack. 73 cattle rustled in Plateau. Bandits taking over our farmlands. That's according to Southwest farmers. Defense chief alleges plot to cause mayhem. The story is on page 4 of the paper. You have an infographic breakdown for you, showing you just where the most incidents have happened and in which local government of Kaduna State. Look at that. 8 incidents in 3 local government areas in 30 days. So far, 452 victims and counting. A really disturbing situation, and painted here by Daily Trust newspapers. Ayo.
Daily Independent leads with something that has been touted as one of the major solutions to all of the issues, well, at least a significant quantum of the issues we are having in the nation. Anyoku, Ibori, Sanwo-Olu, others seek new constitution. We had this conversation yesterday. Nigeria can't survive presidential system. As ascribed to former governor of Osun State, Akeredolu, Ozekome urges new constitution through popular referendum. Well, I guess we'll wait to see how that will unravel. The details of it continue on the inside pages of the paper this morning.
And then let's look at the Leadership newspaper and see what they are leading. Quite a plethora of stories there, but they have that thing about the constitution, the new constitution. But see this one: bandits sustain attacks on Kaduna, abduct another 86. As their lead story there, the big one. Outlaws raided Kajuru Sunday night, 10 days after terrorists. 10 days after, terrorists yet to contact families of 287 students. Defense chief visits Kaduna as governor says school children will return safely. And then you see the pictures of those gallant men who went out there who have given their lives, as the CDS put it yesterday, have given their lives for this country, and they will ensure that this country is together and in peace. We thank you for your service, but that's what the Leadership newspaper is leading with.
Well, indeed, Nyota, may the service, may the labor of our now heroes past never be in vain. And I hope that we keep that at the back of our mind, knowing that some people are actually shedding their blood for this country to continue to remain one. For this country to continue to remain safe and a place where we all can stay. And keep that at the back of our minds when we have some of the conversations that we have, and even in our daily actions. Vanguard newspapers also has that picture on the front page. The fallen soldiers is tagged. I'm seeing a few names here, which are quite legible. I mean, the commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel A.H. Ali, his name is there. Major S.D. Shafar, Major D.E.O.B., Captain U. Zachary, and the names of all the other soldiers, that also lost their lives in that operation are also right there. Maybe not as clearly as you would like, but the pictures are very visible, very clear. That's what they're also focusing on the front page of the Vanguard. Aftermath of soldiers' killings, bloodbath in Delta, villagers flee, hide in forests. That story is right there on the front page of Vanguard newspapers. They have this right here: military on rampage, arrest community leader, others over alleged harboring of perpetrators. Troops storm Bayelsa community, raise buildings, some fear dead. Ovo Rewori visits community. What triggered the bloodbath? You have inhabitants speaking. They have all of the details for you on page 5 of the Vanguard newspapers. Ayo.
The Blueprint newspaper has a similar story on its front page. Insecurity in Kaduna with 86 in fresh attack. 466 kidnapped in 19 days. That's according to investigation. Expert lists non-prosecution of culprits, poor topography, others as reasons for invasion. Army accuses Okwama community of propaganda. That's a very interesting twist, dare I say, to the story, and I don't think it's the kind of thing that we really want to hear. But that's what you have on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. That image is also right there on the front page of Blueprint today. Rest in peace, our fallen heroes. That's the lead story of the Blueprint newspaper today.
And while we celebrate the fallen heroes, we still also celebrate those who are heroes, heroes that are still alive and doing their best to ensure that we all can sleep with our two eyes closed, as Ayo would put it. Let's go to the Observer newspaper and see what they lead with. Rising inflation, cost of healthy diet worsen Nigeria's malnutrition risk. That's what they're leading with in the Nigerian Observer. And indeed, as we said, you have to stay alive first before you think about the roof over your head. But that's a Nigerian Observer for you.
Take a look at New Telegraph. Kaduna, fear, tension as bandits kidnap 87, loot shops in fresh attack. That's a lit story on the front page of New Telegraph. 48 hours after abducting 14 residents, as Kajuru, Chikun local government areas become hotbeds of kidnapping, banditry. Stories on page 2 of New Telegraph.
Well, while all of that is going on, and sadly so, don't also forget that there's that conversation around unpaid salaries. That's the lead story of the Nigerian News Direct today. Osun, Kwara, Ondo, others, varsities comply as SANU, NASU continue 7-day warning strike. That story is on page 2. No government representation, no government rep has reached out to the non-academic unions, according to SANU president. FUD issues 1-week ultimatum for payment, threatens prolonged strike. NLC stands in solidarity with joint union, presses for timely salary entitlements. salary settlements. That's the story. The details of that you'll find on page 2 of the Nigerian News Direct as its lead story.
And this Nigeria has a story that's tied to that matter in Kaduna. Gunmen strike again in Kaduna village, abduct 87. You'll get details of it on page 4, but see the rioters broke into shops during Kajuru attack, loot foodstuffs. Defense chief visits Governor Sani, says they'll soon be rescued. That's the lead story on this Nigeria. And Margaret, it's amazing how all of this that's going on, and someone asked the questions, where are all our intelligence gathering agencies? What kind of intelligence is out there? What's it being done with? What's being used for? What's the response to the level of intelligence that's come? Because we do have intelligence agencies across the country, and they are putting in their best. Again, these men and women, as we said earlier, have signed up to ensure that Nigeria's peace is sustained and restored where it is lost and all that. And they are doing their best. But what's being done with the intelligence that's gathered? How much of information is even passed across to the citizens? I mean, the CDS yesterday said something about the level of information that is shared with the military, and sometimes it comes in late. How quickly is this information shared? Is it timely? Is it adequate? And then when it is shared, what's being done about it? What's the instruction from the top to those on the ground? I was having a conversation with someone, and he said it doesn't matter what goes on from the ministry or the heads of the ministry or of defense. What matters is the man, the foot soldier. Does he have the equipment he needs? Equipment there is not just the hard equipment. The intelligence is also part of the equipment he needs. Is it getting to him? His welfare is part of his equipment for him to run that race to ensure that where he's been assigned is protected. These are all some of the things that are being looked at while we're celebrating what these men and women are doing for us, as we've seen across some of the national dailies.
And Nyota, also sticking out for me is the fact that I think that our intelligence agencies need to be audited. And I don't mean a financial audit, even though that might not be totally out of place. But I mean in terms of the strengths, weaknesses, and capabilities. I mean, I'm not asking for an open audit. That's highly sensitive. But to see what it is that we're missing. Because if at the end of the day, I mean, for years now, we're dealing with Boko Haram. It has morphed into banditry. It's morphed into all of these other organizations, some of whom are seeking secession. And we're now beginning to see elements coming in from the northern Sahel region, penetrating many parts of Nigeria and causing havoc, wreaking havoc. Then there are big questions that we really need to ask as to what precisely is failing. If we do not ask ourselves these hard questions, and this is not to take anything away from the efforts of those who are currently working, it is just to ensure that we actually do have a sound structure that is not jeopardizing the lives of our people unnecessarily. I'm sure, there are still investigations going on into how these soldiers lost their lives and how it was that they were not able to tell when the temperature had changed, when the situation had changed, or whether they could not call for help. Because we understand that initially a few soldiers had been sent to Okwama. They were abducted. They were held down by the villagers. And, the next batch of soldiers had gone there to go and find out what exactly was going on and to make peace. It was a peaceful mission. Somehow, it did not end well. This is what we have now seen. So we need to be sure that the structures that we have is such that it's not also jeopardizing the lives of our soldiers and men. It's in such a way that it is standardized. This sort of attack, as some of our ex-men have also said, should not be happening within Nigeria. This is not enemy ground. How come it is that we're losing our own men who have offered their lives in defense of this country to people within? That is really, really disturbing and worrisome. But in my own opinion, my own humble opinion, I do believe that we need to take a second look, an audit of precisely what exactly is failing in terms of our security agencies. And it should be a dispassionate look. It should not be one that is filled with emotion. Yes, to the rest of the public, we can always be frank and continue to ask for patriotism and support. But internally and sincerely, we should take a second and hard look at what precisely is happening. Is the morale of people low? What precisely could be causing it? Are there fifth columnists within? What exactly could be the motivation for that? Just to be sure that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and we're tight on the outside to be able to face the external enemy. Ayo.
Yeah, I think we need to pay attention to something, Markwe and Nelson, and that's the fact that we need to recognize how the military and the entire army must feel right now. First of all, as we agreed, our condolences to the families of the soldiers that have fallen and innocent people whose lives were lost in this process. And we also commiserate with the Nigerian army on this particular unfortunate incident. We have to recognize that the entire institution of the Nigerian army must feel very, very pained right now. We have to recognize that, and we have to acknowledge it. So we thank you, Nigerian army, for your service. We also, and I'm sure, Markwa, you may have also seen this report on X. The Nigerian army is putting out a statement that the community is kind of pushing back by trying to express some other narratives. That information is on their handle on X. We just need to continue to engage. The top brass of the army have come out to say, look, everyone who needs to do what they need to do should go about their businesses the way they should. But I think various entities and interests in Nigeria must reach out to the Nigerian army and reach out to the different communities here. There is something we discussed yesterday, Markwa, if you would remember, and that's the fact that we need this cohesion. We need this conversation to go on. We need this ownership of the nation. So where two communities in a particular state are fighting for whatever reason, and emblems of state go there to try to make sense, and make peace, and such things happen, I think it calls for a lot of question, not just among the different communities, but among anyone who has any iota of respect for the green and white flag of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as well as a constitution that keeps us together. These things shouldn't happen. We're also talking about fresh attacks in the north, and the army that we trust to go and face these issues is right now wounded. How in the universe are we going to live with ourselves concerning this matter? There's a statement credited to the CDS, if I recall correctly, saying that if we lose the army, everything is gone, and it's all going to be chaos. And I know every one of us agrees that the army is committed to the Federal Republic of Nigeria and its democratic institutions, but we should not take this commitment for granted. We should have conversations where it matters and assuage all pains, all hurts, as much and as safely as possible, beginning with the utterances that come out of our mouth. It's back to you guys.
Indeed, Ayo. Someone asked the question, how many of us even know, Markwe, what it costs to train one Nigerian soldier from start to finish? Do you know? Besides the fact that they are offering their lives, what it costs. Do you know what it takes to equip and educate one Nigerian from start to finish? These are all questions that sometimes beg for answers. But while we're doing all of that, we're also looking at the constitution, the call for a new constitution. Now, governors and ex-governors are calling for a new constitution by the right process, the public referendum. That was yesterday. But I think that's part of our conversation today. And at that point, we'll just say that's where we end the look at some of the headlines in some of the national dailies. Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment to get into our conversation today.
know that you can now print all your essential items for events without even having to leave your home? It's the Cast Print Combo Deal for all events.
Yes!
Weddings, conferences, birthdays, burials, etc. Starting from 495,000 Naira only. You get 50 invites, 50 A2 size posters, 50 16-page brochures, 1 large backdrop banner, 1 roll-up banner, 50 jotters with pens, and 50 souvenir carrier bags. Whatever event you're planning, we can adjust to your budget and quantities. Just send your pictures and other information through WhatsApp, and we shall send a design for your approval. Approve your design, and we will produce with super high-quality digital print technology. We can even arrange delivery to your location. Call us now on 0913-156-5016 or 0812-794-9323 or visit our social media pages. Cast Prints, digital printing at super speed.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Gestede. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Gestede. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
How does double digits affect your purchasing power? What about ballooning debt profile and scarce FX? How's that affecting your business?
The federal government is turning to the money market to fund this deficit. Are yields contracting or expanding? Is this a good buy for you?
Inflation drives MPC decisions and affects sentiment at the equities markets. What is happening to your investment?
Or would you rather go digital? We track all the volatility in the crypto market.
Get the answers from the business team every weekday at 1 p.m. on Business Incorporated, only on Channels Television.
Let's begin by letting you know that 7-day warning strike by NASU and SANO is ongoing. Hopefully we'll be bringing you some updates on that with our correspondent when we have that feed. But in the meantime, let's have this conversation on sundry issues, beginning with a call for constitutional amendments, call for restructuring, and all of that, with Mr. G.T. Ogunye, who is a legal practitioner. He joins us right here in the studio. Thanks for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. And thanks to those who are in your Abuja studio, Malpe and Neta.
This call has been ongoing for quite a while. And it dates back at least this particular Fourth Republic. Do you think it's getting anywhere?
All motions without fundamental movement. The amendment to the Constitution and the perpetual call for amendment, if you ask me, born out of the realization very early in 1999 that the Constitution that we had, the 1999 Constitution, was imperfect. It was a military creation. It tells a lie about itself when, in the prefatory portion, it pompously declares, we, the people of Nigeria, that will give ourselves this Constitution. The Constitution was a schedule to a decree 34 of 1999, which was promulgated by the military. But I guess at that time, two things happened. General Abdul Salami, the head of state, was eager to relinquish power, and people were happy about that. And the Nigerian people were also determined to see the back of the military. So in spite of the fact that the job of creating the Constitution was imperfect, people just wanted the military to go. And so very early, Nigerians started clamoring for a remaking of the Constitution.
If you don't mind me butting in briefly.
Yeah.
I remember that the 1979 Constitution is a product of 1975 committee put up by the Obasanjo government at the time. And this committee was made up of civilians. And that we used that constitution at the time. And then this one is no less. There are those who would argue that it is civilians that the army put together to get this constitution in place, and not that the military sat down to decree and then just changed it. So how significant is that for you?
It's very significant. The process must be democratic and be capable of vesting legitimacy on the constitution. It is not just about drafting a constitution by an assembly of military appointed civilians who in large part will also exhibit the military diktat or ethos. For example, the 1979 constitution that we are talking about, there was a debate on whether Nigeria should embrace the presidential system of government or whether it should retain the parliamentary system of government. The military had a mindset from their commandist status, from their command structure. They felt that the society ought to be commanded and that, the prime minister model or Westminster model or parliamentary system of government was generating centrifugalism in Nigeria, that you needed a stronger Nigeria, a more united Nigeria. And so you needed to have a presidential system in which the executive head, in which the president will be voted for by the entire country. They thought that that would unite Nigeria. The military often boasts that they are the backbone of the unity of Nigeria and all that. But then there was a debate as to whether we needed to go to embrace the presidential system of government. And the CDC, felt that it should be so, right? And, we had a committee of 50 initially. Chief Obafemi Awolowo rejected that wasn't going to participate. People felt that it was because of personality, because Chief Rotimi Williams, who had abandoned the action group in his hour of need earlier, had been made the chairman and all that. But whatever it was, Chief Obafemi Awolowo demurred. And some of them were saying we didn't need to embark on a presidential system of government. Now, that chicken came home to roost recently when some parliamentarians in Abuja started calling for a parliamentary system of government. Why? Because they claim that this presidential system of government is too expensive, that what we have in most parts are governors who have turned themselves into monarchs and presidents who have turned themselves into despots. And that if the governors or the president were to be going to the parliament to debate with their colleagues policy, budget, and issues with a modest form of government, where you don't have all these presidential razzmatazz, planes, all sort of things and things like that, huge bureaucracy and all, servicing a presidency, symbolically, bloated, even physically, literally and metaphorically, looking at the expanse of land in Abuja, taken by the presidency alone, that you have a smaller form of government and that things will be better run. There are people who are saying that now. So the point I'm making is that it is not about just appointing some wise men, some of them who will be lawyers, some of them retired jurists, to draft a constitution. Okay. At the tail end, that constitution must be subjected to a referendum or plebiscite, so that people can vote on it clause by clause and say that this is the constitution we've embraced. That is the legitimacy test. And that has not happened. It didn't happen in 1979. It didn't happen in the Bush one of 1989. It didn't happen in 1999.
But what happened in 2005? What happened in 2014?
What happened in 2005, 2014 was that a president who took the presidential system as given which is part of the thing that had to be debated, appointed some people to come and do a national confab. And worst of all, in 2014, first of all, in 2005, we had the 10th of the third term agenda. Severally denied, but undeniable. So it was a self-serving exercise. In 2014, we had one that the then presiding president couldn't implement, and expecting the person coming after him to implement. And that person came, and I'm talking about President Muhammadu Buhari, and said that, what am I going to do with the report of the confab? It's useless to me. I'm not going to look at it. So that's what happened. Again, the legitimacy test, because you see, it's about first determining that those who are coming to come and debate the Constitution on how to remake it have the legitimacy to do so, are properly elected to do so, not appointed by a self-seeking or self-serving president who has an agenda for them. And two, that when the product then comes out, is subjected to a referendum or plebiscite so that people can then have the final say and vote on it. That's only when the Constitution truly, in its prefatory portion, can declare that we, the people, have made for ourselves this Constitution. So that's what happened.
Mr. Oguye,
yes?
One of the issues a good number of people have also had is the processes that you're talking about. So you're saying that people have to be properly elected to go debate a constitution for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The natural question any one of them is going to ask is, how has the people that are elected into the Senate, the people that are elected into the House of Representatives, and the people that are elected into the Houses of Assembly, how have their elections benefited me? So we'll first of all, as a nation, have to deal with the issue of trust. The people that have been voted for, elected into office over time, they have been, as you said, self-serving. So what's the assurance that the next set of people will be any different?
There will be a difference. There will be sensitization of the people. I guess that organs of government like National Orientation Agency, civil society groups, everybody, faith organizations will be up and then to sermonize about the importance of the constitutional making process. The people will be well sensitized and mobilized.
Well.
Two, because that election saved the possibility of politicians who have their agendas trying to hijack it. Because that election is not about electing politicians to go and be presiding over the budget and party, and electing governors and presidents who will preside over our affairs for 4 years and all that. Because it is for that limited, albeit important, agenda of constitutional making, monetization will be reduced. Those who are going there will think that they want to serve, not that they want to go and earn some money. And that will bring the issue of trust on the table, and the process will likely, I predict, be free and fair.
But
so it is not about sharing money. It is about serving the country. I'm optimistic about that.
I like the optimism, actually. Yeah. But two of my colleagues are waiting. Let's first of all get to Chris Illems at the University of Lagos. He is monitoring the NASU and SANU strike, and he has an update or two for us. Chris, what's new?
Thank you, Ayo. Good morning to you. Good morning to Nigerians. Well, it's day 2 of the Joint Action Congress of NASU and SANU strike. And right here, we are at the warning strike. It's a 7-day warning strike. And right here, we are at the University of Lagos, where they've continued with their actions. We were here yesterday, and of course, they said that by today, they are going to scale up some of the activities, their operations. And by the time I got in here, they were already out on the field And we had to bring them back because right after this interview, they'll be going back to the field to continue with their operations. Right with me, I have the acting chairman of SANU, Comrade Olubenga, yes, Adinaya. And of course, I also have with me the chairman of NATU, Comrade Akeredolu. They are both with me today. So they would be sharing with us some of the very interesting things that they have lined up, because they say that until the federal government answer to their call, they won't stop, this action, that it must get to the 7th day. But we want to know how far it has gone so far. Let's begin with you, Comrade Adinaya. Okay, yesterday we were here and you said you were going to continue this action. What have you done so far? Hasn't the government gotten to you so far?
Well, thank you very much. So far, so good. The government has not actually attended to our demands and our agitations. But from the information we got, we have invited our leaders to a meeting in Abuja tomorrow. Hopefully, at that meeting, if they could reach a consensus and they will have a resolution, our prayer is that the government should do the needful. This strike, we don't actually want it, but we don't have any option. We are government workers. We have a social contract with government, which is as employee, government is our employer. When we work, we should get paid. When we go get paid, we agitate. When we agitate and they don't answer us, then we don't have any option than to go on strike. And the problem with government is that they keep making the same mistake. Why? Because they sign agreements with unions, sign memorandum of understanding with unions, and they don't keep to it. You can imagine an agreement of 2009 that has not been implemented till today. So we are facing the same problem year in, year out. And this one that we are facing presently shouldn't have come up, because the government used divide and rule. Instead of paying all the 4 unions 4 months arrears of we said salary, they paid only the academic staff, the non-teaching staff, leaving the other 3 unions unpaid. And our leaders at the top have written a protest letter to the chief of staff, to the president of the federation, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. And since then till now, nothing has been done. So we are not slaves. This is a country that belongs to all of us. When we work, we should get paid. When we agitate, they should listen to us. You imagine there were different MOAs from 2002, 2022, 2023 up to now. None have been fulfilled. None have been implemented.
Okay, now you're out carrying some actions. What are those things you have put in place for today and going forward?
So far, so good. We've gone to several faculties. We've gone to several units and several departments. And we found out that our members actually complied 100%. Then there are some places where they are writing exams. We make sure that our members are not involved. We do not say the students should not write their exams, because they are also our children. But our members should not be involved in those activities. We have gone around so many places. We are having 100% compliance.
And Comrade Akeredolu, what are some of the things that you expect the government to do going forward? What are those things you want to see the government do for you?
Well, thank you very much. The message is very clear, short, and straightforward. Our witness salary, 4 months witness salary should be paid without further delay. That's just a simple message we have for the government. And you can imagine, in 2009, a government had an agreement with the unions. Government had an agreement with the union in 2009. And to date, nothing, no one. And part of the agreement is revitalization of the university system and other allowances. Those are the things that led to the strike in the year 2022. And we all know, before a trade union could embark on the strike, all the necessary procedures were fulfilled before we embark on the strike. The last weapon of any trade union is strike. And I think that's the language that the government understands.
All right. Well, still here at Unilag, we are hoping that the strike is called off because it is the students that would eventually suffer. Yesterday, we were here and we asked a few of the students, and they said, well, especially those who live in the hostels, that it is going to be hellish for them if there is no water, if there is no power supply, because they need water, they need power supply to cook. And of course, it will be very, very uncomfortable, unconducive for them to do their operations. But we would be here and we'll keep tabs with activities as they continue. And right here, So right here, we also have some of their movement. I mean, some of their members behind me. And of course, they say they must.
All right there, Chris. Most certainly something to keep our eyes on as things unfold. I'm pretty sure that you will continue to keep us informed. Part of the conversation ongoing, definitely, we still have Mr. Ogunye here with me. Markwe?
Well, thank you so much, Ayo. Yes, certainly keeping tabs on what is happening in the universities right there. And excuse me, that's our correspondent, Chris Elems at the University of Lagos. But Mr. Ogunye, it's so good to see you. It's been quite a while on Sunrise Daily, and I know that we've had this discussion with regards to our constitution. Year in, year out, it will seem that this conversation continues to be an ongoing and a recurring one. I'm looking at a book right here, Nigerian Public Discourse, recently published and released by Babatunde Raji Fashola, former governor of Lagos State, talking about general public discourse. And in it, he talks about, is our constitution the fundamental problem? And he writes, this is a legal analysis. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria. I mean, a lawyer very much like yourself. And he says in his scholarly analysis, the issue is not that Nigeria lacks a federal constitution. He says, rather, the question that arises is whether our current constitutional arrangement is sufficiently federal. That's what, that's the conclusion he reaches. And at the end of the day, well, not at the end of the day, but I think very, very early on in the beginning, he says the summation is that Nigerians want a better life. Not a better document. Yes, not a better document. The conviction that the Constitution serves as a universal remedy, a magic bullet with the capacity to address all our tribulations, perhaps warrants a re-evaluation, which has got me thinking about the current situation that we're currently in. I mean, the insecurity, bedeviling the land, a number of other issues that we're all currently dealing with. And I'm wondering, what is the nexus between our Constitution and where we currently are at, the challenges that currently bedevil us? Do you see a nexus there?
There's a nexus. You know, it's very easy for those who are partaking of the distorted form of governance we've had over the years, right from the time of the military, to pontificate or genuinely, offer advice about what Nigerians should truly be looking for: a better society, better government, and downplay the role the constitutional framework will play in all this. For example, I chuckled yesterday when former governor of Osun State and a former minister, a two-time governor, and a minister, was quoted to have said, I read Daily Trust, that Nigeria will not survive without, a constitutional remaking, without a constitutional remaking, so to speak, or more appropriately, with the presidential system of government. And I was wondering, because he had been a partaker, he was a governor under a presidential system of government, was a commissioner before being a governor, and then he was a minister. So did he see anything wrong with, or didn't he see something wrong with the presidential system of government then and all that? But he is not the subject of debate. So it's easy for partakers to say, look, our problem from our experience is not that we have a very terrible constitution. It's just that we should have a better society, and how we get to that is what we should be talking about. Now, the importance of the Constitution is that every act of government must proceed from the Constitution or a law made under the Constitution. So that's how important the Constitution is. So it's the foundation. Our society is a society that is governed by law. And the king of those laws is the Constitution. It's called Fons et Origo. It's the Constitution. And so it is important that we understand that because the Constitution determines a lot of things, including the form of government we should have, including the rights that are enjoyable by the people, including many other things. It is important that that Constitution be properly made. Now, you will see that since 1999, we are on the 5th alteration now. And if I understood the last budget correctly, I think that there's something in there talking about constitutional reforms, so the money they vote for another amendment. So if you've had these amendments, some people may argue that, well, in other climes too, there are amendments. In the United States, you have many amendments, more than 14 amendments now. So I can't easily recall the last amendment, but they've had many amendments. And so people may argue that, yes, what we should do is to continue to amend, to continue to alter the Constitution, and then somehow, someday we'll get it right. But my contention, my submission is that we started on a wrong footing. So we should go back to remaking that Constitution. And I'll give you an example. Many people don't know this. Many of us that are saying that, you know, this is okay and all that. Look, how did we arrive at 36 states? For example, majority of these states were made by the military. You say that they consulted with the people. How did we arrive at this number of states? So that governance has become atomized and state cannot function on their own without aid from the federal government. They can't pay salaries. And even when people are saying that state police, local government police have become an imperative, the counter argument by some people is that, oh, state cannot pay. They won't be able to pay them. Why should we create them? Even when it is obvious that security being local will have to be addressed by local policing, not the dummy of community policing. So how do we arrive at those 36 states? And so many, many questions. Well, we arrived at those 36 states because the military started creating states. Somebody came to government,
yeah, but, you
12
know,
states,
Mr.
just a minute,
Mr.
just a moment. Somebody came to government, 12 states, and then he made it 19. Another person came to government, and he made it 24, 30, and the last one made it 36. Okay? And so we need to deal with all that. How do we end up having this number of local government that are written into the Constitution that people are crying about, which are receptacles to taking federal allocations? What about the revenue generation and utilization formula that they call allocation formula? How do we move from the state or regions having the chunk of revenue generated from their own regions for their own internal use to having those revenues now concentrated in the hand of the federal government with paltry sums being given to the state and local governments? These are some of the questions that we have to answer. And I'm saying that we need to go back to the basics. Constitution making is an important exercise. And why we are saying that amendment will not just do is that I don't imagine, and I know certainly Makwe will imagine, that no matter how altruistic those who are shepherding or superintending the process is, and I mean politicians, they want to amend the way their constituencies, their senatorial districts, and their houses. So if you tell those who are in the National Assembly, we need a unicameral legislature, we don't need a bicameral legislature. So those in the House of Representatives will easily agree, right? And those in the Senate will agree. Or if you are saying that we have to revert to a parliamentary system of government, a president that is within the power of life and death over Nigeria will easily agree and then see himself as a parliamentarian, like a prime minister in Britain, going to the parliament to be rubbing shoulders with his colleagues. Will he agree? Somebody who has become a king, a monarch. These are the issues. So we need a proper constitutional process where those who are in government, the institution they now superintend, will be in the debate. Whether we need this kind of National Assembly, whether we need this kind of State Assembly, whether the governor should not be a parliamentarian in the state, and so on and so forth, and cut down the size of government. If you have a company whose profit is majorly used to service the company, to pay salaries, without making much profit, would that company be viable? We're saying that the structure of government in Nigeria are so many, and there is poor or little governance. That is also a function of a bad constitution. And I'm saying that we need that constitution very terribly. If politicians do not agree with it,
well,
the truth of the matter is that, and I anchor,
the
truth of the matter is that when they are in government, they don't see much things that are wrong with the constitution. When they are outside it, they then start advocating. They turn themselves to civil society advocates like us that they mock of perpetually shouting, and they then start seeing what is right with or what is wrong with the status quo and how it has to be changed.
Mr. Ogoye, I really wish that you would read this book, and it'll be very interesting to see what your review of it will be. I mean, in terms of whether or not you agree with certain things, why you disagree, etc. But, I think the point is about, how sometimes these things are held up as impediments to development. And sometimes where even creative solutions can be found, what people will see and maybe oftentimes hold on to as a very firm excuse for not doing certain things that they ought to do, it will be the Constitution, when there could be creative solutions around it. So I am just wondering whether right now, where we see our insecurity challenges, and we've also seen that sometimes, it's not like as if the Constitution hasn't said certain things, we ignore the Constitution. It is performed, or some of the actions that are taken are performed in ignorance or in disobedience of what it is that the Constitution says. We've had occasions where lawyers have had to, call the attention of those who have been involved to say, no, you can't do that. The Constitution which you swore to uphold says this. Before you do this, you have to do that. And we've actually seen in some instances a backtracking. So is this really so much about this Constitution or about the will to really do right by the people of Nigeria?
It's both. But we're discussing the Constitution is both. People in their closets, and I'm not trying to, bring to the fore what I believe people discuss in their closet now. Sometimes wonder whether there's something in us as a people that is so flawed that we don't seem to get many things right. Or whether those who are in government think at all about society. They think, or whether when they get into government, they still hear and see and know that a lot of things have to be done. Now, the will aspect, it is true that we need that will to do what is right, but will is not a neutral phenomenon. The will of a ruling elite is different from the will of the ordinary people. The will of those who are powerful is different from the will of those who are powerless. So it's not just about, let's have a collective will, let's all of us agree, let's have a creed. What's the Nigerian creed? So that we can do things right and all that. Nigeria is a class society. It's a class society, and people, don't often want to discuss class anymore now. All we hear now is about foreign direct investment, let investors come, this is a market, ideology doesn't matter. It does, but we won't talk about ideology today. The point is that the will aspect is important. But what I'm saying is that the Constitution may even help to bring about the requisite will that we need to turn things around. If the proper things are done. And I stay on one, which is one of the issues people are debating now. Security. And how soldiers are being killed all over the place. In Okwama. And then our heart goes to them. Before now in August, in Shiroro, Niger State, senior military officers were ambushed like this and they were killed. In 2022, 34 military officers, while going to Shiroro, were also ambushed and killed. Okay? So the Okwama incident is not an isolated one, right? So we have a situation now whereby at a supposed peacetime, the military is perpetually deployed for internal security operations in virtually all the states of the country. So we are not talking about the military engaged in internationalist mission in Ukraine or wherever was going on now, for example, or in Liberia. We're talking about our military deployed to maintain security inside Nigeria. And some people have said, no, let's just leave this done in Okwama. Yes, it's a law enforcement situation. Rule of law must prevail. The military must not go on a revenge mission or on a reprisal mission. If 3 military officers were abducted and 12 or 14, now totaling 17, went in search of them, including the commander of a battalion, a lieutenant colonel, and they were slaughtered, and their guns were taken. So, which police are you going to send there to go and arrest the culprits?
Mr. You are opening another vista altogether.
We're talking about Constitution.
Well, we are really out of time. And you know that, as we said at the beginning, this is an ageless conversation. You must come back for another one so that we can take this on, because it is an important conversation that people need to understand. Gigi Ogunye is a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for your time and for the sacrifice you've made. Let's now switch to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Ini and her team are waiting.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Ayo. And yes, this is Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Yes, we'll do about 30 minutes of business before we head back to those serious security and current affairs conversations. So let's head to the global space now. Oil prices dipped on Tuesday, and that's due in part to the prospect of rising supply from Russia, slower than expected downstream demand in sectors such as jet fuel, and cautious trading ahead of the Fed's decision on U.S. interest rates. Remember, inflation numbers came out, so we're expecting the rate cut now. Well, let's look at the numbers. Unfortunately, I do not have that yet. I hope to have it. Okay, there you have it. For the numbers, we see that Brent is down because of obviously of that supply from Russia. We see that the Brent crude futures for May delivery, those are the numbers we have now. For May, down 0.15% to $86.75 a barrel. I mean, this Brent has struggled since last week from about $82, and then we see it now hit 86, which is rather high for a bit now. While U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude, that's the one from the United States, also dropped 0.18% to $82.52 a barrel. WTI April contract, which expires tomorrow, fell 15 cents, and both benchmarks reached a 4-month high in previous session, buoyed by lower crude exports from Saudi Arabia and Iraq, and signs of stronger demand of economic growth in China as well as in the United States. Now, regarding Russia, supply concerns stemming from increased exports following Ukrainian attacks on the country's oil infrastructure continued to pressure prices downwards. Russia will increase oil export through its western ports in March by almost 200,000 barrels per day against a monthly plan for 2.15 million barrels per day, while on a daily basis, shipment is expected to increase by 10% compared to its initial plan for March. Prices were weighed down by uncertainty about how U.S. interest rate would pan out. I mean, we know that a lot of analysts are saying that we expect it to, they expect the interest rate cut to start by June, but they're meeting on Wednesday, that's tomorrow. So we expect to get more information regarding that expected interest rates. On the demand side, analysts are slightly cautious on the demand growth coming from the jet fuel sector ahead of the summer traveling season in the third quarter of the year. We'll go to the grain space now. Chicago wheat futures were unchanged on Tuesday after export-threatening Russian attacks on Ukrainian ports. They are hitting the agriculture facilities while Ukraine is hitting the oil facilities in Russia. Not a good one for the world at all. No winner here, no loser, I say. I mean, we all lose. No winner seems to be coming out of this. More than 2% in the previous session, but prices remain near their lowest since 2020 amid plentiful supply. Soybean and corn futures rose slightly. The most active wheat contract on the Chicago, there you have corn, went up 0.3% at $4.37 for a quarter of a bushel. The contract fell to $5.23 for half a bushel. That's its lowest since August 2020, amid a flood of cheap grain coming from Russia, which has had 2 large production years and expects a third this year. Russian air attacks at the weekend damaged agricultural enterprises and destroyed several industrial buildings in the port of Odessa in Ukraine, another significant grain exporter. The Black Sea port city in Mykolaiv was also hit with Ukrainian strikes against Russian oil refineries and Vladimir Putin's re-election as Russia's president, raising fears that tensions between the two countries might escalate. Russian export prices have increased slightly in recent days, but remain low, according to traders. Well, we'll come back to Nigeria at this time, where the Bank of Industry is assuring Nigerians that it will maintain its interest rate in spite of economic headwinds and the increase in the interest rates by the meeting, the MPC meeting. Remember that met about a month ago. Another meeting coming up next week, so we will start looking at that. The managing director of the bank, Dr. Olashukbo Olusi, who met with journalists in Lagos to share his plans for small businesses, says that this commitment is because the BOI is not profit-driven, but targets boosting economic activities in the real sector.
There's a huge demand for development financing in the country. We are charging interest rates single-digit, 10%. Right? We will maintain that for the most part, right? Because we have the support and the backing of the central bank and also the federal government in some of our fundraising activities. And that's the commitment that we give. We can try to maintain the low interest regime that at which we've been giving many of our lines of credit and support to the economy. And that is critical. At a time when there are inflationary pressures and people are not so willing to invest, you need relatively cheaper interest rates to convince investors to continue to invest, particularly the private.
34 million hectares of arable land. Over 200 million people. One nation. Home to Africa's fertilizer company. Dangote fertilizer. Pure urea fertilizer. With one single-minded passion to feed Nigeria. Every bag is a potential, an aspiration to turn this green nation into the biggest food basket of Africa. Dangote Fertilizer.
All right, welcome back from that commercial break. Now let's look at the financial market just for a bit. We do have some conversation, but starting with this, yesterday market liquidity opened the day in a ripple of 486.17 billion. That's an improvement from Friday's level of 305.61 billion. However, the OPR rate increased by 7 basis points. But I think the most important thing you want to hear about that is the rates of the Naira. So NAFEX gained yesterday 5 Naira 9 kobo to close the day at 1,572 Naira for the close from what it had on Friday. CBN entered the market as a willing seller and willing buyer, which is what we're dealing with. For the NAFEX, it closed at 1,997 Naira 34 kobo after opening at 1,602 Naira 43 kobo. There was a gain of 32 kobo. That's on NAFEX. NAFEN gained more, 1 Naira 86 kobo to close at 1,572 Naira 86 kobo after it opened at 1,605 Naira. So, well, it was a bit of improvement yesterday, but we hope sustenance is what we're looking for, I guess. Let's discuss this and some other issues with senior analyst, financial derivatives company, Dr. Adesola Sumoni joins us from Reading in the United Kingdom. Dr. Sumoni, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Ini. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, so I guess we should celebrate our little wins, but we've seen this little gains on the Naira. We're just wondering, perhaps if we understand what led to this gain, we can sustain it for a couple of days at least.
Indeed, Ini. Thank you for that question. So yesterday, the Naira has actually lost 43%, making it like the second worst performing currency in the world after the Lebanese pound. However, we are seeing some improvement. Like you mentioned yesterday, we saw some stabilization in the FX market, and this is owing to a couple of factors. Number one, it's beginning to seem like, you know, the jumbo interest rates and so the other measures implemented by the central bank governor. The central bank is beginning to bear some fruits. For example, the interest rates, the hike in interest rates at the last MPC meeting, 400 basis points, it has been favorably viewed by investors, and so we are beginning to see some more inflow of foreign portfolio investment. We are beginning to see, compared to in February, there was a huge inflow compared to January, so that has been positive. Also, we saw that the central bank is really trying to clear up the backlog. I think in February, they cleared up, 200 million more of the backlog, which is, again, a positive signal to investors, which is good. Also, the hike in interest rates kind of mopped up liquidity, right? And we're also seeing the government treasury bills, 365-day government treasury bills sell at almost 22%, which again is both attractive for foreign and domestic investors. And so these factors put together are why we are seeing some stabilization and strengthening in the market. It is so positive that, you know, some analysts are beginning to see the Naira settle at between 1,200, 1,300 Naira to the dollar by the end of the year. And in a very optimistic scenario, some analysts are even forecasting somewhere around 1,100 Naira to the dollar by the end of the year.
Yeah, well, some have said, I mean, we shouldn't really celebrate those 1,200 and 1,300 projections because we can do better. But MPC is up again next week, Monday and Tuesday. Do you think that the meeting would wait to see, I mean, the aggressive rate hike that we had in the last one just a month ago? Or do you think there'll be another hike in the next meeting? What do you see? What does FDC see? Because I know you're speaking from your findings at FDC.
Indeed. So we're at a point where headline inflation is almost 32%. Food inflation is almost 35%. There is need to anchor inflation. There's need for bold moves, right? If you think inflation is so high in Nigeria, just look at Ghana. December 2022, inflation in Ghana was around 54%, right? And so we believe at every that there's need for bold action. So we expect a further tightening in the benchmark interest rate, somewhere in the range of 100 to 150 basis points, again at the meeting next week. And the purpose of this is to anchor inflation, is to mop up excess liquidity in the market, but also to attract foreign portfolio investors into the country to ease some of these pressures on the foreign exchange markets.
So for you now, I know like last year we had a lot of interest rate hikes, and it seemed it wasn't translating to reducing inflation. And now we have the CBN for this year targeting about 21% and 21.7% inflation. We're now at 31, almost heading to 32. Do you see this continuous rate hike leading us to that about 21% inflation by the end of the year?
By the end of the year, maybe not. Sometime in the middle of next year, probably, perhaps. Because again, we know in Nigeria suffers from weak transmission mechanism of monetary policy, but with this huge tightening, it is going to signal to other interest rates within the economy, is going to mop up excess liquidity. I think we are begin by around H1 next year, we should begin to see inflation reach that level, or even average 21% this year, because again, this huge, this super tight monetary policy regime is likely to signal to the economy that, it is likely to signal a tightening to the economy and mop up excess liquidity and help to rein in inflation and anchor inflation properly. I think that's quite important, and I believe that by H2 next year, I beg your pardon, we should see inflation slow down to around 21%. But this year, I think the average can be around as low as that. Yes.
All right. So just before we let you go, what's going on in the commodities market? I think cocoa is in the news.
Yes, indeed. Cocoa is in the news. Because we are seeing the price of cocoa increase to record highs. Like as at yesterday, the price of cocoa was around $8,300 per ton, which has doubled year to date. And that's mainly because of production problems in West Africa, in Ghana, in Ivory Coast, in Nigeria, and Cameroon. Issues such as we're seeing whether excess rain or excess heat or excess dryness and diseases are kind of constraining production and exports in these growing countries. For example, in Ivory Coast, we've seen harvest for this marketing year down around 30% year on year, which again is reducing cocoa supply globally. Remember, this region accounts for around 45% of cocoa supply globally. And so with these production challenges and export challenges, it is affecting cocoa prices globally. So much so that the International Cocoa Organization has forecast for a third year a deficit of cocoa in the global market, a deficit of around 400,000 tons this marketing year. And I think that has significant implications for the price of chocolate. We're already seeing some producers are already seeing huge shortages of actual cocoa in the market, and some producers are beginning to either reduce the size of their chocolate bars, or they're beginning to switch to cheaper alternatives like palm oil, or even reducing the cocoa content of their chocolate altogether. So you begin to see alternatives like white chocolate or caramel chocolate. These are just smart ways to account for the shortage of cocoa in the market without actually reducing the price of chocolate.
Oh, Dr. Sumoni, I must say that. I mean, thank God Valentine is over before we have all of this. And I think back there in the UK, you would talk about the chocolate more. Back here in Nigeria, we'll talk about the rice and the gari and the yam much more at this time. Thank you so much, Senior Analyst with Financial Derivatives Company, Dr. Adesola Sumoni. All right, now let's take a commercial break. We'll be back for the next conversation. We're looking at Nasarawa State, and that state is one rich state in Nigeria. Let's find out what they're doing with the wealth under the soil.
34 million hectares of arable land. Over 200 million people. One nation. Home to Africa's fertilizer company. Dangote fertilizer. Pure urea fertilizer. With one single-minded passion to feed Nigeria. Every bag is a potential, an aspiration to turn this green nation into the biggest food basket of Africa. Dangote fertilizer.
Welcome back. We head to, well, Abuja studio, but we talk on Nasarawa State. Now, this is one state that makes Nigeria a very wealthy country, but what we do with it, or what we do with the potential, is another conversation. Nasarawa State is one state that you have soybeans, you have maize, you have millet, you have columbite, you have marble, you have gold as potentials in that state. But what are they doing? What's the government doing? How are they working to explore and exploit these potentials into reality? We have the Managing Director of Nasarawa Investment and Development Agency joining us here. He's Mr. Ibrahim Abdullahi, joins us from Abuja studio. Mr. Abdullahi, thank you so much for your time. Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So we know that as the Investment and Development Agency in Nasarawa State, you have the responsibility to make the investing environment friendly. And I mean, since there's a lot to attract people, but I don't know, how much of that have we explored? Looking at the agriculture, looking at the solid minerals, if you have gold, you should be rich. Maybe I should ask, how rich is Nasarawa State at this time? Can you hear me, Mr. Abdullahi?
Yeah, sorry, I missed you for a second.
Okay, so I'll just repeat myself. I was saying that in Nasarawa State, you have a whole lot of potentials. In agriculture, you have millet, you have soybeans, you know, those crops that are being traded on the international front. We talk about the exchange, and every day we talk about global grains here. Then for non-agriculture, you have things as precious as gold. But what have you been doing with these potentials in Nasarawa State, especially as the Investment and Development Agency?
Well, thank you very much. Nasarawa State is largely an agrarian state. We're also about the most mineralized state in the country in terms of solid minerals. So immediately the coming into office of Governor Abdullahi Sule in 2019, he rolled out a very ambitious plan, which is called the Nasarawa Economic Development Strategy. And at the core of that plan is realizing that government does not have enough resources to harness the potential of the state to revitalize the economy of the state. So the key strategy to revitalize the economy of the state based on this very ambitious plan is to leverage private sector capital and private sector expertise. What have we been doing in this regard? We have rolled out the most ambitious reform of our business environment since the creation of the state. The idea is to invite private sector, more businesses to invest in the state. We truly believe that at the heart of revitalizing economy lies the need to have more private sector investments, because businesses are the best managers of risks. They are the best employers of labor. And we also recognize our role as government as an enabler. So we continue to improve the state's business environment. You will see over the past years that we've had an influx of investments and investors, mainly in agriculture and in mining. Some of the biggest players in that sector have come to invest in Nasarawa State or are in the process of investing in Nasarawa State. At our inaugural Nasarawa Investment Summit in 2022, we had an investment pledge of over $500 million US dollars, mainly in the agriculture sector. Currently, the largest sugarcane plantation in Africa is being put together in Nasarawa State, in an area called Tunga in our local government. As you also may be aware, the largest lithium processing plant in Nigeria, first of its kind, 250 million USD investment is currently under construction in Nasarawa. So from mining to agriculture, the governor has led a very ambitious plan to invite more private sector players into the state to harness this God-given potential and realize a vision for a truly prosperous economy for the state.
So very interesting, Mr. Abdullahi, but you know, I was just going through your site to get more information about your agents, and I think the latest number that we have here is from the second quarter of 2021. So, you know, it would be really interesting, perhaps you talk to your web background guys to update some of this information, because if you want the private sector, I mean, especially if you want international investors, they'll go to your website to try to get information. And if what I have here is second quarter of 2021, where you attracted over 300 million investment, then you leave your investors wanting for more.
Yes, absolutely. You know, sometimes the way that this information are being rolled out, they're done in haphazard ways. Sometimes most of the information that investors get across are published by various MDAs, federal, and also policy initiatives. But we've tried as much as possible to make sure that we update all of our activities and to keep the public abreast of developments that are happening in the state. These are all verifiable developments. Whenever there is an investment coming into the state, we make sure that we do the investment announcement, and we also keep the public updated on the progress of these projects and investments.
Okay, so how, I mean, what are your targets, or what group are you targeting as your investors? And also considering the need for skill sets that is required to explore, especially your mineral resources. How do you handle this two parts? Because it means you're not just asking people to bring in their funds, you also need the residents or the indigents to be able to participate to provide the skills needed.
So we are not discriminating any demography in our target for investments. We're targeting both the big ticket investors like Dangote and flour mills. We're also targeting medium-sized investors that will come and spend $500,000 to $1 million in the state. And we're also very dearly interested in small businesses that continue to be the live wire of the state's economy. So our reforms don't discriminate. Our reforms are all-encompassing, from a small trader in Bukansidi in Lafia to a big agro-industrial factory all the way in Nasarawa to the Dangote sugar cane plantation in Tunga. Our reforms don't discriminate. We know that we need a mix of the big ticket investors, the medium-sized investors, and the small traders. So that is why we have automated a number of our processes. For instance, if you want to do a business premises registration in the state, you can access this online, and within 48 hours, you'll be able to get your business premises approvals. Likewise, if you want to obtain building plan approval, the Nasarawa Urban Development Board has the portal online for you to apply and get your business plan approval. Same goes for the processing of certificate of occupancy, which is a very vital piece of document for people who want to come and do business in our state.
Well, we have to tell you, Mr. Abdullahi, there's a whole lot expected from someone in your position if you're going to make the environment business-friendly or investor-friendly, and then you have so much potentials in Nasarawa State. And, you know, investors would want to obviously get new information from you. So thank you so much, Mr. Abdullahi, the Managing Director of Nasarawa Investment and Development Agency, for your time. We wish you all the best in your work.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having us.
All right, let's head to the markets now. It was a red day at the NGX yesterday. The markets, the NGX, the Osho Index dropped 0.40%, even though we're still on the 104,000 right there. There has to be a breather, and profit taking has to come in. Equities is still holding on to 59 trillion naira, even though we've lost some of those hundreds right there. So if we're not careful today, we might head back to 58. We don't pray for that, but it's the markets. Investors have to take profits, you know, after putting some money there. The market lost 238.55 billion naira at the close of trade yesterday. Volume, value, and deals were in the green, however. The highest gainer being the value went up more than 100% to close at 10.8 billion naira. More than 9,000 deals is what we saw. Looking at the sectors, consumer goods was the only red, 0.35%. Banking, the figures always lead there at 2.53%. Perhaps they will have profit taking today. Let's not get too excited. When money is put in, money has to be taken out. Industrial goods slightly up 0.03%. Insurance at penny stocks building up again, 2.95%. While oil and gas barely moved at 0.01%. Top trade yesterday, the banking, trust them, the Fugas, UBA, GTCO, and Transcorp consistently and persistently gaining since Transcorp Power came to birth right there. Investors have not taken their eyes off that stock. That's Transcorp. I don't know if it's too late for you to hop in, but I know Transcorp has been moving. Look at the fixed income market and see that there were 38 deals at the NTB Treasury bills. The last auction we had here, I believe, was on Thursday, and then the federal government bonds. I think we almost had our time, so my producer out there is just pushing it. Number 17 deals at the fixed income. But I'll leave the markets right there so we can head back to the Sunrise Daily studio because it's almost time for that. So that's it for Business Morning. Back to you guys, Sunrise Daily.
Well, let's have this conversation this morning about national orientation. And that's a much talked about topic as well in the wake of the situation that happened in Delta. The President Tinubu said, look, no one should dishonor any emblem of state, in which case he was talking about the military. Yesterday we had a conversation with the retired Major General Akeredolu, who was saying part of the reasons for that occurrence in Delta State couldn't be anything short of inadequate community engagement, because two communities were warring and the military was invited to go mediate, and then all of that happened. So it begs the question of national orientation, particularly at a time when the Minister for National Orientation has also been talking about a national values charter. Joining us this morning, as you've seen earlier, is Mr. Asunyota Akwomeme, very well known as Alibaba. He's a media entrepreneur, he's a comedian, and he's also a public commentator. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
How your take on that opinion by retired Major General Akeredolu that part of the reason for the occurrence in Delta State was inadequate community engagement?
You see, the essence and importance of the community engagement cannot be overemphasized. You see a lot of the oil companies always have that desk in their companies where they have somebody who is in charge of community relations. It's important. But above all, it is the neglect of it that then causes the consequences we now see. The engagement, which is why these days you then hear the people in the force, police force, trying to beg people to relate with them better. When the relationship is sour or is suspect, trust then becomes an issue. When trust becomes an issue, you have an information, you can't go to pass it on to the police.
The person you don't trust.
Exactly. Because most times, people who have tried to pass this message to, pass some information to the police, end up being suspects. Or being asked, how did you get this information? He said, I heard it from her. And then when you then try to report them, some of them even then endanger the person that brought the information to them. So what happens is there's an absence of trust, and that trust then relates to how people then communicate with the police or the force. I am sure that one person in that village would have known about these things that these people have done. And as soon as those people came to find out what happened to these other three, they would have even gotten the information. But you see, that information is not there. Patriotism is on the lowest right now across the country. Patriotism is at the lowest. People do not even believe government policies, do not believe government plans for them, do not think that anytime government says they will do this, they will do it. Because every time you hear of something government tries to do, something happens again that makes us believe, or makes the people believe, I don't think government is even sincere. So those are the issues.
Well, you know, when we were growing up, occasionally we had the Lagos representative of the National Population Census in the studio once, when the government was talking about the census and aspiring that, okay, at a particular time it was going to take off. So we had, and she's, of course, now with the Lagos State government, we had this conversation. I was talking about how people needed to be mobilized. And we were talking about a song that was done by a Fuji musician back in time. It's a common parlance. He was talking about census, how someone will come to them and will be asking them, come and count us and all of those things. So music was used at the time. And I also remember I think it was, I'm not sure whether it was during the military era, before or after.
Military era.
No, I'm talking about the Andrew saga.
Okay. So Andrew not check out.
Yes, I think that was about this during the Second Republic, or about the time it was going out.
It was 1993, 1994. It was about that time. Okay, so it was during Babangida. MAMSA mobilization.
No. I'm talking about NTA. You know, it was just NTA at the time.
Sure.
Enebele Lebua led that cast of Andrew No Checkout. It was in the 80s, I remember, because it was about the same time Veno Mariogai released an album called Nigeria Go Survive. So we have had cases where the entertainment industry, for instance, was used as a mass mobilization instrument. Tell us what happened at that time, because I'm pretty sure you have some kind of background. And why are we missing out on that opportunity now?
Our national consciousness at that time was very high. The belief in a country as we had it was very strong. Nationalism was high. It's at the time that social studies were being taught. It's at the time history was being taught. It's at the time we're very proud of the people who came before us. It's at the time civics was a subject in school. It was a time when the national anthem is sung. Everyone stands up. There's no movement around. These days, national anthem is being played. People are walking up and down. As MC of certain events, I have to then say, please stand for the national anthem. Remain standing. Sometimes you find photographers and all of those going up and down, but you must remain standing for the national anthem. The respect for the flag, the respect for country are all the things that orientation is needed for. You need that awareness to be driven to the minds and driven into the minds of people so that it is in front of mind and front of consciousness of the people every time to know that first, country first. But you see, when you take that out, it then takes them back to their regions. So it becomes region first. You need to begin to push the awareness to the point where people believe when you recognize the Nigeria first mentality in the minds of the people, you begin to have a better country. So all the time you have the Andrew not check out, it was about trying to say, let's come together and save Nigeria. There were several songs then at the time. So the use of the creative industry, government and politicians only recognize it when it's time for elections.
But that's not the way it was before.
But no, it wasn't. But you see, so for them, they use it as a tool, achieve the purpose of winning an election and forget about it. You need to continue to drop. You have a national orientation agency. Your national orientation agency is to create awareness, is to build public trust, is to continue to inform the people, get feedback from the society and from citizenry back to the government. They're not doing any of those. Those are the things that are missing right now. Those are the things that MAMSA, with Jerry Garner at the time, were doing. They were creating awareness for people. They were making people know about government policies, breaking it down in different languages. Not everybody is educated. Sometimes pidgin English is the best way to even pass messages to nearly about 70–80% of the population, because of the 200 and something people that we are, 200 and something million people that we are in this country, about 80% of that number can speak pidgin English. Other institutions across the world recognize it. The BBC has a pidgin service because they know the value of communicating with people and getting feedback as well.
And you know what's interesting in all of these things that you've said is the engagement ambit, the communication part of it.
Sure.
And we all know that by nature, government communication is formal. Is, as we would say in English, it's straitjacketed. It has to be in a particular way, in a particular format at all times. Now, how do we get around the situation where we use musicians to do these jobs? We use comedians to talk about God and country, because there are quite a number of comedians who Nigeria is the butt of their jokes. How do we reverse that trend? What informs that?
Okay, so the thing is that once you build national interest, you build patriotism, and you build nationalism, you let people know that there's something to live for, there's something to fight for. I'll give you an example of how disorientating some things are. You're telling people to buy Nigeria. You're telling people to think Nigeria. And you go ahead and buy so many cars from another country when your car manufacturers are here and are looking for business. One, right? You have businesses that are here. There is a Zynox, there's a telecoms companies that are based here. You don't give them business. You take the hard-earned money that you are looking for, dollars that you don't have, and give to a foreign country. Look at what the airline is doing right now. When a particular airline, I'm mentioning them, when Airpeace dropped their prices, and are going to begin to fly into some other countries, decided to cut their prices as well. So what are we saying? Let's be patriotic. And to drive the patriotism, government itself needs to be in the forefront of showing example. Once you have an exemplary government that is doing things showing that, yes, we are considering the people, we are nationalistic in policies and everything that we do, people will follow you.
Okay. Well, I know that my colleagues also have questions for you. So, Niata, please go ahead.
Ali Baba, it's good to see you, and Happy New Year to you. There is this, the pledge. Let's start from there. I just scribbled it down here. You've said a couple of things. You've talked about the use of the creative industry. Most times, the politicians only remember the creative industry when they are approaching the election season. But let's get to what we recite in primary school. I don't even know if they recite it these days. We all recite it. And now when we go for events, what we hear is the second stanza of the national anthem. They play the national anthem, just the tune, and we all stand up, and then we now recite the second stanza as a prayer. But the national pledge, I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. You said something about national orientation, that the government needs to be at the forefront of it. So the question I want to ask, do you think the government recites a different pledge from what the Nigerian citizens recite?
Obviously. Yes. We're not mincing words. Obviously, because when you think about it, when the government says this should be done, and then you then see that they are not doing this, you tell us to tighten our belts, right? And you are putting on weight. So what we need to do is the government needs to put everybody on the same page. When you say this is going to be done, you show by examples that this will be done. If you say don't drive against one way, the government on its own side should ensure that any of its people that drives any government vehicle on one way should be punished as well. It shouldn't be that it takes a governor to stop, like during the Fashola time, to stop a military officer from using a route that has been designated for public transport and calling him to order. We should not be seeing such embarrassments. Overseas, the respect we give to military people, you want to board a flight, they tell you they have to board their armed forces personnel first before they board any other person. Here, people will tell you why. But you see, once you begin to create a better consciousness and awareness for the values of country, we would all respect it. But it has to come from the government. You can't tell us to buy Nigeria, and you're not. So what I'm trying to say is that government needs to show better examples for us to obey.
Okay, but when you say government needs to show better example, granted, then where is the role of the citizen? So if the government is not showing the right example, does that give the citizens room to step out of line?
Okay, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. But you see, they now begin to see that it looks like this government is not for us. You don't want that to happen. For instance, when it's time for elections, people feel like, okay, government has said there's going to be elections. They come out to vote. And then the government machinery that is supposed to make sure that the vote is properly counted and accounted for, is wavering. And then the people don't have trust. So when you have trust issues, it's hard for you to convince people to begin to believe in any policy and anything that you do. Which is why at the time, the military had that big issue. So because it was military that created it. When they had that big issue of trying to win over the citizenry, they had to start the mass mobilization, create awareness, do adverts. A lot of the adverts, most of these, like government wanted to start, government wanted at the time to reduce our population because the economy said that we are at a verge of increased population, and the population was going to be overpopulation. And so we are verge of overpopulation, and there's need for awareness to be created. So what happened? They got Sonny Ade and Onyeka Owenu to do the song of having babies, not be joko. You know?
Wait for me.
Wait for me. That you go feed them, you go clothe them, you go something like that. If you never ready to carry the load, why put them for another person? Which is what is happening now. You actually have somebody who has a job, earns 1 million naira, has 2 kids. You have somebody who earns 60,000 naira, has 8 kids. And then after, you now want to put it on the... But the government has to step in and make a policy. But apart from that, they too must respect that policy that they've made. Government cannot put something out and say, oh, this is a policy, only those people should deal with it, and we can't deal with it. No. So what I was saying is, whatever government policy is out there must be one that the people must respect. But for the people to respect it, government must be the forefront of pushing it as well.
You know, seeing you right now, the first thing I want to say is, Brassier, it's so good to see you.
Mark, it's been a while. It's been a while.
And you always say, you know, Shebi, I'm a comedian. What do I do? If only people will listen, you know. I want to ask you something, because I've just written a bit of your biography, and, you know, the fact that you wanted to read law before you decided to veer off into comedy and, you know, doing what you did in university. I do not know if you've gone back to read law, if it's still a desire of yours. But as somebody who, and I'm making this, you can tell me about your background and maybe interest in law, whether it's something you've still done. But based on the fact that I do not know that you're a lawyer or that you have read law, I want to ask you, I'm assuming that you are an everyday Nigerian just like myself. When you hear these conversations about how our constitution has a bearing on where we currently are at, I don't know what your thoughts are to it. Do you think that there's too much emphasis on our constitution being the cause or being the bane of where we currently are?
First of all, it is that our constitution is the biggest problem we have right now. It's an anomaly. It's not actually a constitution. It's something that some people got together, drafted, got some constitutional lawyers and say, put this together, knock it together, and let's have it. Because the Constitution doesn't speak to the growth and national development of our country. I'll explain. There was a guest you had before now who spoke about the creation of states. Some states were created just to appease some military officers. Oh, this guy is a senior military officer, he comes from this area, and we can't give him a state now. Let's just create a state and take care of those people. Or there is also the issue that, we say, okay, we want to create 4 states in the north. Let's just balance it. Let's split some in the south so that everything, it looks like it wasn't like deliberate. Because some of the states that were created needed to be local government. Up till now, you have states that if they do not get federal allocation for 3 months, there'll be problem in the state. Meanwhile, those same states have enough natural resources. Because all of this really, let me now speak like someone who went to school. All of the problems that we have right now was when the federal government, the federal military government, decided that all regions should bring their monies to federal government. Put it in the national purse and we'll give you what you need. Because at the time that Western region had its own money, Cocoa House and all those things were being built. At the time the Eastern region had its own money, a lot of things were also being built. But you see, when these military men took over and found out that, okay, the reason Ojukwu had so much power, the reason Awolowo had so much power, is because they had this kind of money in their hands. So going forward, after the Aburi Accord and all of those things failed, let's make sure that the money comes to us and we determine who gets whatever. Derivation fund is just also trying to just appease those abnormalities. Because the truth is, if you want your country to grow, let each state generate its own revenue. The federal government can assist them if they want to. But the funds and the revenue that comes from certain states should not be shared to every other person. If you're thinking like that, then I was talking with someone the other day and he was saying, this is just to let you know that the national orientation needs to do a lot more. You're saying that Abuja belongs to the northern people. And the guy said, oil belongs to the south. How many Hausa men have been in charge of national NNPC? So it is not about that. One is national, is national. which is the reason some of them fear about the regional police. So what I'm trying to say is that we have a country where the states are not even capable of taking care of themselves because of how warped the constitution is. And our legal minds should sit down and actually draft a constitution that pays everyone so that each region can actually grow to their... what is it called? New York is not depending on the state of Texas. Texas is not dependent on the state of... So, but they pay something to the federal body. That's what we need for proper national consciousness.
Mm. I'm just wondering whether you see a bearing between that and our national orientation. Do you see how that has affected our behavior, our, you know, I'm looking for our attitude towards patriotism, etc. over the years?
So our national orientation, and as the agency was set up for, was to consistently raise awareness, is to provide timely and credible feedback, is to positively change attitudes, values, and behaviors, and to accurately and adequately inform the citizenry, is to sufficiently mobilize citizens to act in ways and promote peace and harmony, and for national development. But let me tell you, before the elections, there was talk about census. What did the National Orientation Agency do to push the awareness? No, none. None. You had issues of exchange rates going to be controlled by CBN and also. What did you see on TV? That was a public service announcement from the National Orientation Agency. None. What we should do is our National Orientation Agency should have a studio, have copywriters, creative minds. These people that are in the creative industry, have them at your beck and call, ready to push out awareness, to drive policies, create information, create awareness, so that people then understand it. Before people begin to fire back at you and say, why is this, that, why is it? You would have informed them before the thing even happens. What happens is that it's just like a lot of people were just shocked at the time that Mr. President said, oh, subsidy has been removed. So certain things like that, before it is done, you create an awareness and tell them the value propositions and the benefits of this policy before it then hits the market.
But you know, there's something Malkwe asked you, was it Malkwe Neota that asked you?
Yeah.
The role of the citizen, does that empower the citizen? The fact that government is not doing the needful, does that mean that the citizen should just, you know, go on without? Because I'm asking that because, as I said earlier, some musicians, you know, go to town and say all kinds of things. In the examples of musicians calling Nigeria by whatever name, and some of your colleagues in the comedy industry who will go out and say, Nigeria, let Nigeria not happen to you, and on and on like that. We depict these things even in drama. Okay. So that's the question that I would like you to, how can we as a people take the lead? Because it is the Nigerian that is going to become a government official.
But you see, when the Nigerians start complaining about certain things, that's a feedback that the National Orientation Agency is supposed to take back to government to say, these people are feeling this pinch here and there. But you see, most times when people complain, they feel like you are against the government. Right? So the people truly must serve their own obligations. They must perform their own obligations to government and live right. You say the people should not drive against one way, they should always obey the traffic, but there's this huge pothole that has blocked a certain part of the road, and they can't take that part again. And then they try to use the other side that is good. You said, no, they must stay on this other part. You see, so government must also come and meet them.
In the meantime,
exactly.
In the meantime, what do people do? By the way, just before you answer that one, and I know that we're out of time, much of these we have been talking about the national orientation. Is there no role for the states?
Okay, so what happens was that, the states don't have orientation agencies, but their ministries of information and communication, most of those strategy and information, always try to push the policies that pay government most. Feedback channels are always considered as opposition. Getting information from the opposition. So there's need for awareness to be created for people to understand that this government, because once an election is over, There's no more this party, that party. Everybody now has to work with the government that's in power.
So many other issues to raise with you, Alibaba, because, I mean, I would have loved for us to explore conversations around mobilizing young people, because if that had been in place, what happened in the Delta communities probably wouldn't have happened. But for now, we have to thank
because they didn't know the consequences too. You have to know the consequences of something you are doing that is wrong.
So they weren't fully engaged.
They were not fully, exactly.
Absolutely. Atinyota Pobebe, also known as Alibaba, thank you so much for your time this morning. He's a media entrepreneur, comedian, and public commentator. Well, that's the conversation. Nelta and Makwe, I beg your pardon. Yes, Nelta Makwe. What's new?
Well, what's news that we have to go, and the truth is that we all have a role to play in moving our nation forward. We need to love this nation and just be our best at that area where we find ourselves in our own little corner. Do your best, do your thing, and let's hold up Nigeria. I'm Nelta Egbe. Thank you for watching.
Well, thank you for watching today. This is also continue to salute the service of our servicemen and women. Thank you, Amal Yusuf.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your service, Nigerian Army. And what's new? It's the news at 11. We'll be right here.
Big tech wasn't really here. What have they seen in the past 10 years, which is making all of them want to put their HQ here?
If you're a business that sees itself growing global, we'll definitely need some sort of like boosts. We need to tap into those existing networks that these big tech companies do provide.
Is there a downside to big investment in Africa? Okay. It's a tricky question.
If we want to be like Amazon, we want to be like Google. Like, this is not, we are not looking to sort of be just another player.
For me, big tech is something highly controversial.